so? Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay, good morning. This is NetConf session for IETF 124, session number 1 on Monday. So I feel incumbent to sort of go slow on the slides and walk through all the important stuff. I'm Kent Watson, my co-chair per Emerson, and online is our Secretary Mithun. This I have to use the clicker. So this is the Notewell. Actually, it's the new Notewell. They just came out with this version of the Notewell. It's a lot like the old Notewell. You agreed to this Notewell when you registered for the IETF, so I don't really have to go over the details of it, but be aware that your contributions are considered, the IPR contributions are considered to the IETF. This is the Know Really Well, which I'm also not going to go over in great detail, but just be advised that there's an anti-harassment policy, and if there's any issues that you can see the ombudsman for to address your concerns. For meeting tips, for in-person participants, everyone that's in the room, be sure to sign in to the session using Data Tracker or using the QR code to the session. I think the QR codes are hanging off the microphones. Just scan them. Use the NetConf. Usually it's called the NetConf Lite client to join the mic queue. So you join the mic queue, you press the raise the hand button, I think, the show of hands button. And also when we run the polls, be sure to participate in the polls using your mobile or your NetConf client. Please keep, if you're in the room, please keep your audio and video off. But for remote participants, make sure your audio and video are off unless you are chairing or presenting during the session. I think we will be having 1 or 2 remote participants. So at that time, please turn your audio and video on. We do recommend using headsets. There's a number of resources for NetConf. All these links are available in the agenda that's published online already. So you don't need to click on these if you already have the agenda. This is a 2-hour slot. Per will be running the countdown timer, so we know how long each presentation is supposed to be. And we'll try to set the timer at the beginning of each of those sessions, or each of those presentations. It is a packed agenda, 0 time remaining, but there were 4 presenters that asked for 5-minute slots, and we gave them 10-minute slots because it always seems like 5 minutes is not enough. What that implies is that there may be 10 or 20 minutes left over at the very end. And if that's true, then we'll have a small open mic session. So if you are having any open concerns or issues, that'd be a great time to raise them if time is available. As mentioned, the queue will be managed using NetConf. So use the queue, use the hand symbol to speak, use the microphone symbol, and this is for remote participants. But remember to remove yourself from the queue. Actually, many people forget to remove themselves from the queue. So typically we remove them from the queue necessarily because we want to ensure the right NetConf knows the right person that's speaking. Please contribute to minute taking. Per did just send the link to the notes to the chat window. Please join and help us take minutes. We do encourage participation. The IETF is a volunteer organization, depending on your contribution. Important contributions listed by level of engagement. So first, the simplest thing to do is just join the mailing list, engage in the mailing list. Second would be making comments to the microphone. Next would be reviewing drafts. We're really in need of draft reviewers. And then of course, draft implementers. If you want to be an author of a draft, that's incredible. And lastly, we always need document shepherds. So at the tail end of publishing a document, we always need someone to help us do that final review. The shepherd is that person. So always please try to nominate yourself for contributing. Working group document updates. In general, we request all working group document authors to provide a status update for every IETF meeting. The status update includes recent changes, outstanding issues, plan to complete, etc. The updates can be done either as a presentation during the working group session at the IETF meeting, or as an email to the working group list, no later than the internet draft submission cutoff deadline. Active authors are encouraged to participate in the review of other working group documents in order to increase the working group activity/participation, reciprocate effort shown by others, and illustrate broad understanding, interest, and thought leadership. Be aware that the chairs are human beings that may forget and miss deadlines, etc. Please reach out to the chairs if you feel something has been missed. Status of post working group documents. So before digging into this, I just want to note, we have a lot of documents that are in the post working group document queue. Gosh, what is that, 12 or so? I've never seen so many documents that have been stacked up in the queue. That haven't been published. And so many of them, this is kind of in order, right? So the ones that are RFC editor queue at the top, so those are really past ISG. And then there's a number that are with the ISG, there are some that are with the AD, and then there's some that are actually with the chairs. And I see we have someone who would like to go for that. Yes, please.
Just one small comment on the UDP notif. My current understanding is that...
Speak a little closer.
Sorry. So my current understanding on UDP notif is that the Shepherd review is done and there are no open action items. So I think it's publication request instead. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, chairs are human beings. Thank you. So I won't go over each document in one by one, but for this meeting, we have a number of documents that are current working group documents, and you can see that 4 of these are actually in working group last call, and 4 of them are works in progress. They're still working group documents, and 6 of these are being discussed in this meeting, and 2 of them had updates sent to the list. Now for the specific agenda for this meeting, first we'll have a presentation on list pagination, followed by a discussion on supporting a versioning for Yang notification description. Then the extensible Yang model for Yang push notifications will be presented. Next will be a description to notifications in a distributed architecture. And then augmented by addition to the Yang library, NetConf and RESTConf private candidate data store, NetConf over quick, and then lastly, Yang groupings for quick client and quick servers. And to say lastly, these are the chartered documents. These are the ones that have been adopted. For unchartered documents, there's just 2 presentations today. One will be for CBOR encoding for the HTTPS transport of Yang notifications, and last will be Yang push Lite, which we may be renaming at some point. But yes, Mahesh, are you in queue?
Mahesh, talking about documents that are in the ADQ, I just wanted to let the work group know that we recently unblocked on the HTTP client server draft, which I think will unblock a slew of other drafts. I think NetConf client server, RESTConf client server, and ultimately HTTP notice draft. So we should see a few more drafts make it into the RFC editor queue after this meeting.
Right, and I forgot to mention that. Thank you for saying that. Also, I forgot to mention there's a large stack of documents that are in queue. This group has not published a document. We haven't published an RFC for a year. It was last October when the TLS client server draft got published. So that was the last RFC this working group published. So it'd be good to see some new RFCs published. Anything else? Okay. All right. You want to call up the first person?
So list pagination, Jin.
I got it now. Just took me a second to remember how to do this.
Good morning, everyone. So it's a great have this opportunity to have first presentation in this IETF week. So the topic I want to share today is list pagination for Young-driven protocol. So we have 3 relevant draft. First is list pagination based draft. We also have NETCONF RESTConf extension for list pagination support. And for list pagination base draft, the latest version is 0.8. The main change we made is clear review comments raised by the young doctor and also ops DR review. And also we made quite a lot of editorial change. So let's quickly go through this, the change we made. The first is we define XPath context for where query parameter. So this issue raised by the LADA in young doctor review. Actually, he suggests when we handle XPath in where query parameter, we need to add a context node and also accessible tree. So solution we propose, we actually modify, I think there's some typo. We modify the allowed value definition in section 311, and we specify context node as the target of the query, the accessible tree as both config true and config false list and live list. The second change is we clarify whether the offset and cursor parameter can work together. So this also the issue raised during the OpsDR review. Some concern if we use these parameter together, like offset and cursor, they may cause potentially conflict. So based on our exploration, we think these 2 parameter actually take two different pagination can be seen as a different pagination technology for retrieving dataset. But offset focus on a more design for the small stable dataset, and cursor more design for the larger real time dataset. That's therefore, so 2 parameter cannot use together. So we mandated in the latest version, don't allow the offset use together with cursor. And also we add a statement to conformance in section 315 to make them mutually exclusive. The second document is the NETCONF extension. The latest version is 0.8, and we clarify the prefix binding for XPath expression appear in the where parameter. We also update the revision data for list pagination NETCONF for young data model. And one issue actually, in the latest version, we already support system capability advertisement. But one comment we received from young doctor review, he think we need to also add NETCONF capability indicator support for the pagination. But we think this feature redundant with the system capability advertisement already documented in this latest version, so we didn't implement this. We'd like to hear your feedback if you think this is something we need to add. And for prefix bounding, actually also raised by LADA in young doctor review, and so we didn't, do this prefix bounding in the this pagination based draft, but we add a clarification text to the NETCONF extension draft in Appendix C. You can see the key difference between the previous version and latest version. So we bound the prefix to the example social young model in these cases, and also we use this pagination NETCONF namespace for the query parameter. And for RESTConf extension, the latest version is 0.9, but we want to also remind, actually, we delete operation in the previous version, and we clarify for cursor feature support is a stateless. That means the server doesn't need to store any stateful information about next or previous cursor. And we also add a note in the introduction about the performance penalty when using query parameter. For other changes, it's more focused on needs fixing. And actually, for these 3 drafts, actually, we still have some outstanding issues that need to be fixed. And we'll continue to spin another revision and get all the also together to discuss this and reach agreement. So, for example, whether we need to allow dangling reference in the XPath filter based on Lada's comments, and also whether we use this pagination error for logging and debugging, and how this pagination used together with the ResConf. So this issue we will resolve, and after that, we think we can consider to conclude a working with last call. With that, any comments?
I guess not. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up is support of versioning of Yang notifications subscription.
Thanks a lot, Per. Thanks. Sure. Not yet. Perfect, thanks. So we wanted to give an update since the document was last presented at IETF 120. So there were a couple of changes in revision 7, 8, and 9. In revision 9, which we have just recently published, the main changes were related to the Yang semantic version draft document, which is at ISG and soon will be going to RFC editor queue. So we incorporated the last changes from that document and also did some alignment regarding section 431 of RFC 8470 bis. In the 08, there were minor changes, editorial changes and example changes. And in 07, that's where basically the last normative changes in the document came in terms of notification capabilities. And also we brought the Yang library content ID in the subscription started. So in the last few iterations, we mainly were working on implementing the draft into 3 implementations. As I said, since the Yang semantic versioning document is now stable, and since we are referencing it, we believe there are no more action items here open. We requested by the chairs to have a Yang doctor's early review just to make sure that we iron out any Yang related issues, and I saw that this is in progress. So besides that, there are no more open action items, so therefore we believe the document is stable and ready for working group last call. Any comments and remarks? I see Rob.
Oh, this is a bit low. Rob Wilson, Cisco. Thanks, Liz. I agree with you. I think it's ready for working group last call. I had one comment. When I was reviewing it recently, I think it was slightly unclear as to which module names you're putting in there on the path.
I see.
So that I think just needs to be clarified in the document what it is, but nothing needs to change, just needs some clarification.
Sure.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, we can start a working group. Let's go.
Okay.
Oh, you got the next slide.
Exactly. Sure. Good. Okay. So on behalf of the authors, so the document is currently on the working group last call since end of August. The working group last call has been extended due to the early reviews by the Ops Directorate and the Yang doctors. So we received from Jürgen and from Joe, and thanks a lot for the reviews, some input. Most of the things on the young doctor side has been addressed. There are an open question on the Ops Directorate side, which we were addressing, and we'd like to get from the working group feedback, whatever we addressed that in the right manner. We did, as discussed last time, we were engaging the core working group to get some feedback from there as well. Haven't received yet. And just a final thank to Andy, Paul, Jin, Rob, Richard, and Jürgen and Joe for the views. So there are two last-minute items for discussions, which we like to get some feedback. So before going there, just an overview of what changed since revision 2. So there were editorial changes, some examples were being fixed. We removed the normative text that the contents element must be located at the end of the notification envelope structure, because there were comments that basically in Yang there is no ordering. Then from the Yang doctors, feedback was please use from RFC 69.9 bis the timestamp type def, and also use the host hyphen name type def from there, and please remove the normative reference to RFC 3339, because this has been updated by RFC 9557, and also since IETF Young Types already has normative text in the host hyphen name definition, we don't need to specifically describe relationships towards RFC 1213, where the sysname is being defined. So another input was that we have on the hostname normative text that the hostname must be configured before by the administrator to identify the host uniquely. We made the SID file normative, and then we added two Yang features for the notification envelope and for the hostname sequence number. I said there are two discussion items. One is an input from Richard in terms of the observation timestamp naming. So on the left-hand side, this is what's currently being defined in the document. On the right-hand side is the proposal from Richard. There are pros and cons in terms of whether it's the readability is slightly better in XML versus there is text in RFC 8407 bis, which is guidance for young module authors. And it states that the name should not be repeated within a container. And I think we already had in the working group previous discussions about the naming of that. And I see Rob is in the queue. Exactly.
Actually, I was in the queue for the previous slide. I can talk to this one.
Oh, sorry for that.
So I'll talk to the previous slide first. I had a couple of comments
Please.
on what you had there.
Sure.
So I agree with the contents element must be located. So removing that, I think was my suggestion. I think that's good. I also wanted to observe that I think the cozy provenance draft that's been presented in Ops AWG, it's putting that provenance field before this envelope structure, which is fine. But actually, I'm not sure whether it should come after. So I think, again, having flexibility there is good. The text about the host name must be configured. I would prefer that wasn't in here, because it's sort of conflating like a separate device configuration with this protocol. I would rather it says if it's present, then you include it. If it's not configured, you don't include it. Just because I don't really care too much. But otherwise, I'm not sure whether we would actually implement that check. It'd be just like, well,
fair point.
So, and then the last thing is on the new Yang features, you've got feature for notification envelope. Is that covering the whole module effectively? As in, would you ever implement this module and not turn that feature on?
So it's for the entire model, yes.
then I would just lose the feature because just implementing the module itself is the indication that you support it. So I don't like top level features at the moment, at least.
I see.
And then on to the other, your next slide, sorry.
Mhm.
My suggestion is to keep it shorter. I prefer the one on the left because I don't like the duplication. I was going to check what Yang Push Lite does because obviously it doesn't have the namespace issue because it's embedded directly. So I'll see what that one does.
Okay. Thanks.
So this is Rashad. I agree with Rob for the previous one, remove the top level feature, but that's not why I came here. Just what to add, I agree that the timestamp on the left is shorter, and regarding the repetition, I mean, you don't have a container here.
Yes.
It's a top level module. Actually, one of the things I had discussed with Alex and yourself on the mailing list was why not put an observed container to wrap timestamp and point in time. There's actually a third option. Yeah, this is not a big deal for me, as I mentioned to you, and thanks to you and Alex for addressing. I think we've closed on 10 comments, stuff like that. So that's a nit. Thanks.
So we would like to have feedback from the working group, whether preserving the timestamp as it is and in the document, is it the right way of going it, or whether there is interest of changing to either the two proposals Rashad was mentioning on the right-hand side, or adding an additional container for observation.
You want to poll the room for this?
That would be perfect, yeah. Thanks.
While we're waiting for Per to set up the poll, I forgot to mention earlier, when you come to the microphone, it's no longer necessary to specify your affiliation. Just your name is okay. It used to be the case that I think IETF asked for both name and affiliation, but now, we're all volunteers. We're not really affiliated with any organization, so it's okay. Either way is okay, but you don't have to feel compelled that you need to specify your affiliation.
So we start off with show of hands if the timestamp should be kept as is in the draft.
It's a virtual show of hands. It'll come up on your screen in a moment. Right, so if you choose that you'd rather not have it show up as it is in the draft, then it leaves open the other option, which is on screen, or the third option that Rashad just mentioned, wrapping with a container.
So we're now at 14 for yes, 6 for no, and 2 no opinion. A bit more, 15 for yes. So I would say that rough consensus is to keep it as is in the draft from the room.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Good. And let me real quick go to the second discussion point. That was an input from the Ops Directorate review from Joe about the toggling the enable notification envelope, that all active subscriptions are terminated. And we wrote some text for it, and we would like to hear whether this proposed text is also for the working group fine. That would be great, just to make sure. Yes, Beno.
So Benoit, why are we doing that? Thank you for changing the state to last call. Now it means, why are you doing the poll, right? Since we have time. So it means that the new last call message was sent, which is a new feature in the tooling. So can you clarify where we are in the last call? Because it might be misleading.
Okay, so while we're setting up the poll, we should have changed the state and data tracker when we started the last call of that draft, but we forgot to do that. I won't go into the details of why, but that's the case. And so as an oversight, we did change it just now, and that's when, so the email got sent now, but it's not actually the case that we just started the working group last call. It's been in progress for some time. And anyway, that's okay.
I think Richard has a question.
Yeah, so based on the previous slide where you were showing the behavior, I mean, I don't have the full history. Sorry, I didn't follow the discussion between you and Joe on that. Personally, I'm not, if I understand correctly, the proposal is to not allow a configuration change when the device is in a certain state.
That's correct.
Personally, I'm not a big fan of that in general. For me, config is valid or invalid depending on other config on the devices, not on state. But that's, you know, it's a preference.
So Rob, so I basically have the same comments as Rashad, but I have a much stronger feeling that we shouldn't do this. So I'm strongly opposed to forcing a config check to be looking at the current operational state of the device, because it means that whether the config is valid or not may depend on operational state, which we want to strongly avoid.
Great. So we have Joe.
So Joe Clark, since I'm the one who suggested this, I wasn't necessarily saying that, and I debated about this, but my job as someone considering operational considerations, I would thought, well, what if I just do this and I don't, first of all, the draft didn't mention this, or sorry, the draft mentioned it, the Yang module did not. Exactly. So if I'm implementing this Yang module, fine. If I'm a user and I diddle this option and all of a sudden all my subscriptions go away, that violates principle of least astonishment, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying that the publisher has to reject, but I do think there should be some operational considerations for those implementing this to what might you do? Maybe from a CLI perspective, you throw a warning. Maybe at the Yang perspective, you just accept it. But regardless, this should be at least in the Yang module so that you know, if I'm reading the Yang module, irrespective of the draft, I know that there's a potential of disrupting my subscription flow by changing this option.
Can I just very quickly reply to that? So basically, with all the other configuration, we don't have this concern. So, for example, we don't check that all the BGP sessions are down before we remove BGP config. We don't check there's no traffic on an interface before we shut down an interface. So all other config changes just allow this to go ahead and basically damage be damned.
So maybe the consensus is that basically what Joe was mentioning, that there was text in the document, but it was missing in the Yang model itself. So there should be like some text saying this is actually disruptive, you know, when this config change is happening, but there should be no preventing actions while.
So Rob, yeah, if I shut down an interface or if I delete configuration, I do expect a negative type of change. When I enable, what was the option called? Enable notification envelope, I may not expect existing subscriptions to go away. I'm okay with just adding the text to the Yang module, just so everyone doesn't have to go back to the draft to read it. But I kind of disagree with the comparison there between shutting an interface. I love you.
So just the last thing to make a recommendation here is, so I think adding the warning about this is an impactful change, I think that makes sense. I think the bit about saying you must prevent this, I think that's the bit that's wrong. And you should either leave it to the device to reject it. If they want to do that, I wouldn't recommend it. Or you could say, no, just shut down the sessions and redo them. And I think the last point is, I think this has to apply both ways. You're talking either way.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Absolutely.
We're closing the poll. There is no, well, the consensus says that they can't keep it, have to, or as is in document. But you have some guidance from the room as well.
Exactly. So what we discussed afterwards, we gotta add the informative text in there, but yeah. So since we cleared now these items, we're gonna update the document accordingly, and then I think we are ready for sending that for ISG publication. That's all.
Since we're on page 6 of 16, are there more slides?
These are just backup in case of,
Okay.
yes.
I guess you need to update it while we're recording for according to the discussion, right?
Exactly.
Before publication.
Mhm. This one we already have. This is what I just presented. What? No worries. Yes, so subscription to distributed notifications on behalf of the authors. Also here, a brief summary, what has changed throughout the revision 14, 15, and 16. So the document ended working group last call in end of February. We had in June the Shepherd review and a write-up, and then we got the Young Doctors and the Ops Directorate review, where we addressed some comments in 14, 15, and 16. So first of all, many thanks to Martin for the Young Doctors review and Jürgen for the Ops Directorate review. There were some minor changes, mainly on the terminology side, in capability, but also in the publisher master agent side. And we were changing also the naming of some leave list items to be singular, so to match the guidance from RFC 8407 bis. And there were from input from the Ops Directorate review to make the document a bit more reader friendly. Some restructuring of the document structure itself was happening. So next question, there are no open items from the authors or from the shepherds. I wanted to ask the chairs and also Mahesh, what's the next step? Are there any open items to be done on our side, or what is expected? Just to double check.
Mahesh, speak. I mean, I guess this is still a work group document, so I'll wait for, I guess, the chairs to decide whether
I mean,
we
we
can
can
do a
always
work
group
last call.
And that would be the next step, I suppose, from a process perspective. Was there not an issue from the transport area? I'm sorry, did you discuss that already?
No, so there was a review from the transport area, but all the points were addressed and also confirmed that it's addressed. So working group last call finished in February. Shepherd write-up is done. So there are no remaining items.
To the second working group.
I'm unsure right now exactly what the state is,
Sure.
but we've been discussing, there's a lot of documents going through. So just reading through the Shepherd write-up and then progressing them takes a while as well.
Sure.
Um,
No problem.
Also, I mean, the working group last call ending in February, that's a long time ago. It would make sense perhaps to do a second working group last call, just to have it, reviewed again,
Okay.
since it's been so long.
Good.
Is there anything else?
Yep. That's it. Thanks a lot.
Hello.
You should have slide control.
Yes. So I guess we can start. So I'm Joyao, and I will give a short update regarding the augmented AI draft. Since last IETF, we have concluded the work of last call, and during that period, we have submitted until draft version 12 to address the lasting issues in the work of last call. And they're mainly regarding the thing module sets restriction for the base module and the augmented by module, which is proposed by Rob regarding according to some implementation issue. So the consensus is that we will put the explanation text earlier in the draft to enable the reader be aware of this restriction as earlier as possible. So we have added test in section 1, introduction, and section 2, motivation. And we also changed the word should to must when describing this restriction in the description statement in the YAM module. And to address the operational directory review, we mentioned in the draft title that this document updates RCA 525. And then we have the last call concluded. That's for the changes updates. And I would like to just take this opportunity to thank everyone that provides feedbacks, reviews, and comments during updating the draft. And thanks for all that supports the draft during adoption call and the work group last call. And that's it.
Thank you. The queue is open, but this document is sent for publication. After you fix this we discussed it in Madrid, and you presented the change that was necessary, and so it's sent for publication. So I guess it's in the ADQ to progress.
Yes, in the ADQ, in the queue, long queue.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so NetConf private candidates.
Hi, so James Cumming presenting on behalf of the authors, myself and Rob Wills. Just an update really on NetConf and RESTConf private candidate data stores. It's currently sitting in working group last call state. So just as a reminder for what it does, so it's providing a mechanism to extend both NetConf and RESTConf to support multiple clients making configuration changes at the same time without impacting each other, whilst ensuring that they commit only changes that they defined or are aware of. It covers two specific aspects, so how NetConf and RESTConf interact with the private candidates, and also how you resolve any collision. So what is a collision and how you resolve that collision. Just as an overview, a client selects that it wants to use private candidates through the use of a client-based capability that it sends when it opens that session. And therefore, any session or private candidates are tied to a session. We reference it via the candidate configuration data store, so defined as candidate rather than as a separate private candidate NMDA style data store. That was following feedback from the working group. And when you create a candidate, we essentially branch off from the running candidate. So you see in the diagram, multiple candidates existing. And when you commit back in again, they sync them back into the running, and then you can update on request or automatically your ongoing private candidates in other sessions. So as a reminder, they are bound to individual sessions. So one session is either a shared candidate or a private candidate. You can't switch between both modes midway through the session. You can, of course, create multiple candidates in parallel, so multiple sessions. We define what the collision is and how to resolve them. So where are we in terms of the document? Not too much work has happened since the last meeting. 07 was published prior to the last meeting. And we got some editorial feedback on that has been included. Unfortunately, the 08 version wasn't published in time for the cutoff, so technically we can't discuss it here, but it has been published and is available for you to review that covers that editorial feedback. And the authors believe that this draft is now in a kind of rough consensus state. We believe we have rough consensus, and we would like to progress it towards the ISG. Rob.
So I had quite a lot of comments on, I think it must have been the -06, the working group last call version. I don't think any had any reply back to my individual comments. Should I review the latest version to see if my comments have been addressed? What's the best way of doing that? Is that okay?
Apologies, Rob, if we misreplied. I thought we had replied to your comments. Certainly we have included your comments in the drafts over the various iterations, for sure. I know that there is one comment outstanding from yourself about separating the NetConf and RESTConf pieces into more specific sections.
Okay.
We did look at that piece, but actually the differences are relatively minor, and splitting it out actually makes the document I'll talk for my opinion as opposed to a joint opinion on this occasion, but as opposed to it being cleaner. So we've left that in the substantive sections about what the actual section is about, because the differences are pretty minor in both cases. So splitting it out made it a little harder to read.
Okay. So is it, before this goes to the ISG, is it possible to get a chance to review again? Is that okay?
I mean, it's published, so absolutely, yeah. Please do, and please provide feedback. We'd like to close that last call and get things moving towards the ISG, but I mean that's for the chairs, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, see no more questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll look for, I mean, you said just publish the 08, and Rob would do a final review on that, and I guess then we could close the work group last call and look to do a Shepherd write-up.
So NetConf over quick.
Good morning, colleagues. Now I want to give an introduction for the modification occurring to the NetConf over quick since the last 1 to 3 medical meeting. I'm the first guy of these first slides of the PPT. And we have collected several comments from the mailing. I'd like to give thanks to Georgian, John, and Martin, and Will, and the other relevant expert. And we have accepted the majority of the comment, and first I have modified the abstract part, and then that is the modification occurring to the last sentence of this part. And secondly, I think this is the most important point for this draft. And during the 1 to 3 medical meeting, we have introduced option 1 for the how to map the quick collection, quick stream, and NetConf sessions. And so far, we've discussing among the authors, and we've got the option 2. And at the moment, option 2 is the most preferable option for how to map the 3 logical entities. And from my side, option 1, option 2, not a pros or cons issues, and it is just a left hand and the right hand issues. In other words, maybe we can accept option 1 and option 2. And both are feasible, but they are substantial different between each other. And to option 1, we have made full use of the multiplexing feature for quick, but it seems a bit a bit more complicated, and option 2, the logical is very clear, and the implementation for such an option is very simple. So I think among the authors, we agree to accept option 2 because it is proper for unknown kill. And Carter, I'd like to ask you if you have any further suggestions, then maybe you can tell us and bring forward the suggestions through the mailing list. I think this is the most critical issue remain for this draft. And we also want to modify the connection establishment and the security consideration, but there are not a huge modification occurring to the part. And we also, from section 6, according to the comment for this draft from the mailing list. And now the section 6 is for this aspect. And we have also performed the editorial improvement for the draft. So, so far we've got 4 aspects for the issue to be addressed in the future versions. The first one is the most important one, mapping among the NETCONF session, quick stream and quick connections. Now we've got a solution, but maybe this solution should be confirmed by the relevant expert. And if we will also want to have the ever code and stream ever in the next version. Now, according to our current work plan, ever code and stream ever should be added to the version 5. But because we've spent a lot of time discussing among the authors, and some authors are busy in other issues, so we have not reached the consent about this part. And about the third part is about the confirm, because there was a suggestion. If we can find other additional descriptions, then we can add those descriptions in this part. And in the future, we will work on this aspect. And the last, we want to perform the further editorial improvement. So, and to the next version, in next version 6, maybe we can confirm the solution for the mapping. Then we will elaborate the description. And so far, we've got some comments from Jason, and I have discussed in the other authors. Maybe we can accept those suggestions from Jason and improve the descriptions for option 2. And second, if we find some additional description for the corner home part, then we will add some description for this. The third one, we will want to add the ever code and about the include the vegetal application errors and the stream errors. And the last part is improve the editorial, fix the editorial typos. So next step, we want to address the issues, including the mapping together with the other issues. And they also would like to ask for WG logical after solving the issues. And from our side, I'd like to emerge ourselves into the process to advance the draft since the 1 to 4 meeting, and we can, I hope we can solve those issues as soon as possible. And maybe we can generate a version 6 before IETF meeting. Then we will ask WG for another code. That's all. Thank you.
Rob, question 2.
So just Rob Wilton, so just on the stream splitting, I think your current suggestion is better, as in I think what you've got there makes more sense to me. I had a question for Per though, because my assumption is that you don't generally need multiple connections from the same client, NetConf sessions to the same server. So I think my assumption was that's not that likely, but didn't know whether the guys who write the more things higher up above the stack, the controllers would say, no, actually it's wrong, you do have multiple connections.
You mean multiple NetConf sessions?
To the same device?
Probably not.
Yeah. So I assume it's not.
That either.
Yeah. So then it's not worth optimizing for. So the current draft solution then makes more sense.
It's a lot more simpler to have one NetConf session per a quick connection. It makes a lot more sense. And the drawback would also be that if you have multiple sessions, you would still need to use the same credentials and everything. So it doesn't make much function. You can't just bring in an arbitrary NetConf session to somewhere with other credentials or whatever. So, yeah.
And
Maybe the only reason you'd want to do it would be for private candidate, if you wanted to have separate private candidates, and so separate sessions.
but there's not going to be a huge number of those. It's going to be a few of them. So again, it doesn't seem like it's worth optimizing for. The other question I had though is there any implementations of this yet? Because it feels like this might be something where it's helpful to have implementations to actually check it's working. And
yeah, there's a proxy implementation that
Okay.
I know of, and a smoke test implementation as well.
okay, thank you. Thanks.
So Kent, next in queue. First, one comment as a chair. I just want to remind the working group there is no RESTConf over Quick document because RESTConf already supports Quick. So, I mean, normally we would have a complementary document parallel to any NetConf specific document, but that's why we don't have anyone this time. And my second comment is, sorry, did you want to respond to that?
Just on the RESTConf over Quick, is there anything in the current RESTConf draft about splitting over separate transport sessions, separate streams, effectively, or is that below the layer? So
I'm
if
not
you
aware of anything specifically stated in the draft. It's unstated.
yes, because it wouldn't be in there. So I'm just trying to work out, is that something that matters at all? So one of the benefits of using Quick, as I see it, is if you've got multiple subscriptions going up, you put them on separate Quick streams. Would you automatically do the same thing for RESTConf? Does that need to be stated anywhere, or is that implicit? Or
When you say going up, are you talking about telemetry? And
yes, and
alerts?
notifications, things like that.
So it depends on the version of HTTP. So if you're using HTTP 2, then potentially use channels. If you're using HTTP 3, then you use the quick specific streams for that. But it doesn't go into details.
Okay.
I had a follow-up comment. Oh, sorry. Did you want to reply to this as well?
I did. Luberger, I wasn't fast enough on the queue control, so sorry for not being in queue. I think having a document would be very useful. One, to cover exactly what Rob was just talking about, the use of multiple channels within HTTP 3. The other thing is I know there are vendors out there who have said that they don't want to do it because there's no specification.
A document specifically for RESTConf over Quick?
Yes.
I see.
Or HTTP 3, as it would be.
Uh-huh. Okay, and now my comment, as not as work group chair, regarding call home. So as author of the call home draft, you raise a good point. I'm not sure how it can be done with Quick, because Quick combines the underlying transport with the security layer, and the way the call home solution was able to be achieved was because they were separate transports. So I think this is something that we need to look into.
Yeah.
We could have a discussion offline on it.
Yeah, and we will address the issue soon.
Any other comments? Okay, so this is continuing to be a work in progress,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
we'll continue the discussion on the list. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Per Andersson. I'm going to present the current state of the Yang groupings for quick clients and quick servers. Let's go. So this intro slide has been on all the presentations. It's defining Yang groupings for the quick protocol, where we're using TLS client server and UDP client server. Adding now IANA Yang modules for quick versions and quick transport parameters. And this draft is used by NetConf over Quick to hook into the NetConf client server Yang module. So updates for this version, the IANA Yang modules have been refined, the quick versions and quick transports, according to the feedback from Madrid. The registry values are encoded as enums and not identities, as it was discussed. Added reference for the enums and some editorial fixes, but An early IANA review for the Yang modules have raised the feedback that they need some guidance on how to update them, which we'll come into. So this is what the IANA quick versions Yang module looks like. There's no change. We used enum, and the identity is the value from the quick registry. Issues we had that we discussed was to use the value, but there's a big limitation there that it can only be 32-bit. And the feedback from the working group was to just skip it. So we're not using the value, just using the enum identifier string. For the quick transport, this was actually an issue because the value, the identifier for the parameter is a string, but the value is in a separate column. And those values were, as we probably can see on the next slide, too big to fit in the value space. So feedback from the working group was to not use the value and just put it as you see below, as in the current module now, just put it in the description. So that is what has been done. So for the IANA review, the quick registry is special because apparently the values can change. So even though there's a value in the registry, it can change, and then the IANA module needs to be updated. So the question was regarding Yang Semver and Yang module versioning. Is this a backwards compatible change, or is it non-backwards compatible change? And what version should they put in if such a parameter changes? Which is a very interesting union of stuff that I'm involved in. And I think that what will be the guidelines is that if it's just appended, just do the normal update of a minor number. But if you actually change the value for an already present parameter, that would be a non-backwards compatible change, and you would need to version the Yang module accordingly. Comments are welcome if you don't agree with this, or if you agree. Yeah, Phil?
I'm just ignorant. Under what conditions can this magic registered number change? I mean, that seems kind of...
I don't know. I don't know that yet.
Oh.
But I will ask Ariana, and
I mean,
maybe someone else knows.
Okay. I think that's the first thing to figure out, because if it's like, you know, once in a generation versus once a week.
Sure.
I think what you suggest sounds like it's the right choice to me, as in if it changes, follow the normal Semver rules, don't do anything special here, because I think that's where we eventually got to, was that it's better to be explicit in what's happening, and if it's a major version change, that's fine. It's just like, this is announcing this has happened, that's okay. But any implementations are aware that there's this change is occurring. Doesn't mean it's going to cause problems.
Yeah, actually, I believe that this is not a big issue. They just need guidance, and I think that Yang Semver helps very much in this sense to show. Okay. Yeah, the next steps are to update the IANA considerations and check for this special registry, and then go for working group last call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Presenters. Who's presenting?
Hey everyone.
Okay, just 1 second. I'll pass the slide control to you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you should be good now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, quick intro about ourselves. I'm Siddharth, and I'm part of a team from the National Institute of Technology, Karnataka. This is our draft CWAL based including transport for STBS, transport for Yang notifications. I'll quickly sort of go through the draft itself, the inspiration behind why this is happening. So this is in fact an extension of Mahesh and Ken's draft, the STBS notive draft. A quick run through of the STBS notive draft itself. It defines two resources, capabilities, get capability resource, and notification resource. And the interaction happens between a publisher and receiver. Interaction is described in this diagram. The publisher sends a GET request to discover the receiver's capabilities. So, of course, the capabilities can be things like the encoding format, which is JSON, XML, or as we'll come to see, or as well. The receiver sends back a response with the capabilities encoded in the appropriate format. And of course, the response body also conforms to a Yang data model. And the publisher can continue to post messages which contain notification data. Of course, once again, conforming to a Yang data model. A quick overview of our implementation as well. The HTTPS notive draft. Of course, we defined the two receiver resources, the two resources which are capabilities and relay notification. The collector receives notification data and publishes it to a notification designated Kafka topic. And the consumer, a Kafka consumer, also reads these messages and insert it into the time series database. So this enables us to sort of visualize the data received since this is a TSDB, and you can go ahead and try it out since the code is containerized. Yeah, this is an extension of what I just mentioned previously, that we're monitoring all of these metrics being sent to and fro to Prometheus and Grafana. And these metrics are not useless. We've also done some performance analysis on them. And as you can see, intuitively, it does make sense that on lower bandwidth networks, the limiting factor is in fact the amount of data which can be sent, in which case CBOR is highly performant. But on cases where bandwidth is not really the bottleneck, all three encodings perform more or less equivalently. This was our finding based on the suggestions of Mahesh and Ken and our Professor Mohit. We decided to extend the draft by mentioning the fact that the CBOR is also one possible encoding within this schema, not only JSON and XML. So that's a quick run through of our draft and the previous noted draft. I'll let Meher take over the updates from what's happened since Monday.
Yep. Yep. So we presented the draft in IETF 123, and we have got a few comments on the mailing list as well, which we've addressed, and we've also got a few IANA redirections to fix a few documentation references, which I've done. We've also got a lot of comments on improving the writing and also the title of the draft, which we have changed. We've also made implementation changes based on the discussions we have had. And yeah, we'd like to thank Mahesh, Thomas for their comments on the mailing list, as well as Rob for the questions asked last time. And we'd also ran through the draft again, made the changes, and we wanted to bring a point to discussion, which we thought would be useful. We weren't sure whether to upgrade the accepting encoding from application slash CBOR to application slash Yang data CBOR, because it would give us more granularity in controlling whether we want to choose CBOR named identifiers or CBOR SIDs, because application slash Yang data CBOR has an optional parameter called ID, which lets you specify what you want to use, and that is mentioned in the RC 9254, or whether we should keep it consistent with the original draft that we're referencing and use application/cboard like they use application/J1, JSON and XML. This is something we wanted to bring into discussion. We'll also bring it up on the mailing list so that we could have a discussion on this. And if anyone has opinions now, they can let us know. Other than that, we've seemed to have addressed most of the things. And we would like to ask for any other comments or any other improvements that we can make, and also ask for working group adoption, and hopefully before the IETF 125, if that is possible. That was for the draft part. We've also been working on adding CBOR support to LibYang, which would ideally help Yang push implementations for like the coding purposes. And we'd made a draft PR to the community, and it is under review. The link of the PR is there. So any questions?
I don't see anyone in the queue, but your previous slide said that you wanted to fix some items before asking for adoption. I don't think it's actually necessary for us to wait for the document to be perfect in order to adopt it. I think at this stage we're fully aware of what the document's trying to achieve, and we could adopt it on that basis alone now, in fact. So I think Per has prepared a show of hand poll for us to see if there's working group consensus to adopt this document.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have at least a third of the participants responding with affirmative that they think it's ready for adoption. So we'll look forward to adopting it, and we'll explain how to do that after the meeting.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yep, that's about it. Thank you.
All right, now we're heading into our last presentation, and this is one where Rob said he could consume all remaining time. However, the all remaining time is now 45 minutes. That's maybe more. So this this suggests that we will have some time for an open mic at the end. So if you have any like open issues that you like related to NETCONF working group, start thinking about that, and we'll have that discussion after Rob's presentation. I haven't asked control yet. So
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure I managed to get to 45 minutes, but we'll see. So Yang Push Lite. So effectively, I've updated the draft. I've presented this a couple of times before, initially around a year ago, and then various updates to that. So we've continued to progress this draft, and more so now. I'm going to give an update of where we are at, and in a fairly high level, and then discuss basically what the next steps are here. So just a reminder of where we are and what we're trying to do. And the goal here of why we started this is that we are implementing Yang Push, or a variant of it, but there's been a load of extensions and augmentations to that. And there's bits of the Yang Push RFC 86, 39, and 41 that we don't implement because it's overly complicated, too many options, things like that. And there's bits where we haven't implemented it exactly according to the spec in terms of encoding. So, so we're not quite doing Yang Push, we're doing something very close to it. And as part of that, we said that we had a lot of specs, can we try and simplify this? And we took this as an opportunity to both simplify the specifications and also try to simplify the actual implementation as well. The other observation here is that GNMI has a lot of traction in the industry, and although that protocol is not perfect, is that in terms of implementations, there's places where we want to have more alignment between the two. And so again, in terms of doing Yang Push Lite, we're trying to move a bit closer to the GNMI implementation. I mentioned about merging in recent extensions, and the last point is about doing more efficient implementation. So Yang Push had some requirements that when you do like a periodic message and update, you return the whole data set in a single message. And that doesn't make sense for our complex distributed systems where you're getting the data from many different sources. You don't have to buffer it all together and turn it into one message. So again, Yang Push Lite allows us to send separate bits of data up from different publishers in the same way we do for GNMI and the same way we're currently doing for our Yang Push Lite, Yang Push implementation. What are we not trying to do? We're not trying to start from scratch. We're not trying to rewrite a new telemetry protocol. So that's not the goal here. We don't want to reinvent things, but it has to be said that as part of doing this work, we've had quite a lot of extensions and additions and cleanup as we simplified things, and there's probably a bit more to go. So it's not simply a matter of taking the existing spec and cutting things out. We're adding improvements as well. So one of the things that has sort of come up, I think I sort of covered this one already, is that what's in the name? So some people have said, is this Yang Push Lite? Is this Yang Push V2? I'm not sure I'm wedded as to what the name is. I'm not sure it really matters. But I tried to put together a slide here to sort of explain that even though the draft is currently 126 pages, and I've taken 10 pages off of the issues we're currently tracking because they're going to come out. So it doesn't feel very light, but when you compare that to what we have before, then potentially it is. So on the left here, the Yang Push solution, it's sort of highlighting the various drafts that form that entire solution. And I've left out the RESTconf part of that dynamic Yang subscriptions over RESTconf because I'm not sure we necessarily include that in Yang Push Lite or not, but that weighs in at 223 pages. Whereas what I think we'll end up with for doing Yang Push Lite is we're currently about 125 pages-ish. We've got some things still to merge in, but I think we'll end up at like 135 pages-ish. So it is going to be quite a lot simpler in terms of the two. And then there's some other dependencies we'll still have with the Yang Push Lite specification. We're not using the RFC 5277 NETCONF event notifications. Instead, we're using the new envelope things, which again is what our Yang Push implementation is using. So that I've excluded at the side. And again, the transport specifications are separate from the base solution. So again, we would be using new versions of HTTP Notif and UDP Notif. And you may wonder, why do we need new versions of those specifications? And it's fairly simple. And that's because we've used a new namespace for Yang Push Lite to allow both an existing implementation supporting Yang Push and one doing Yang Push Lite or Yang Push V2 to coexist. So that's one reason we've done that. And because of that new namespace, it means that the augmentations that those two drafts use need to go into a new place. So either there'll need to be BIS versions of those documents or other minor ones just to say, use the same groupings, just augmentations, just put them somewhere else. So relatively light work. Kent, do you want to?
Yes, as a contributor, the name. So Yang Push is, as a name, is not necessarily great, but it's kind of what we have. And if you think of it as V2, Yang Push V2, it seems to carry forward. We could. I don't like the word light, in the name. I don't think that would last very, or it would. Yeah. Looking back in time, it wouldn't. No one would understand. So I don't think we should have the word light in the name of the protocol. But yeah, Yang Push V2 or perhaps something, telemetry. I don't know. We can come up with something. But
yeah, I mean, in terms of the container for configuring this, it comes under data store telemetry. So maybe something like that might be the better name for that. So, but I don't get stuck on the naming of this effectively. That's not the key thing. And Rashad, who's the person who initially proposed, caused an naming issue. You're in the queue as well. Okay. Yeah, we've got time. We can discuss it. But anyway.
Can you repeat that comment? I couldn't hear what it was. What was Rashad?
Oh, so he's taking his name out of the queue. Yes, so that's where we are. I'm happy to choose whatever name we want that's reasonable, but that's not really the purpose of this work. So what's changed since the previous version, -01, and actually there's been a lot of work that we've been doing since the last IETF meeting. So the whole way this document started was a merge of 8639 and 8641. We took the text or bits of the right text from both those documents, put them into one, and then we've been going through and trying to sort of compress that text down. And some of the sort of simplifications that we've done has meant there's a lot of merge of that text, and a lot of it's been rewritten in terms of being reworded in places as well. So a lot of that work is now complete. There's a couple of sections that still need to be done, particularly the bit about NACAM support and effectively filtering and things like that. So that still needs to be written or updated, but not very much. And then the RPC error handling in Yang push again, that might be overly complicated. So that's another bit I want to look at. There's some of the examples I've been updating now, and they're now being validated, but they haven't done that, haven't completed that. So there's a bit more work to do that. One of the discussion points we had before is whether, and it's also still open, is whether to try and split out the config into a separate draft. In the last IETF meeting, there wasn't consensus necessary to do that. I'm still on the fence here as to whether that's a good idea or not. I can see the benefit of trying to take it out. At the same time, I can see the benefit of having a single document with everything that you need, or most of the stuff you need in one document. But towards that direction, what we have done is to separate the config part of configuring Yang Push Lite subscriptions into a separate Yang module. And that's worked quite cleanly within the document. And probably over time, we might restructure a bit further too. So even if it does stay in this document, it's more clearly its own separate section. And makes it clear that if you want to implement the IETF configuration model, then that's fine and that's optional to do, because I think it's possible that quite a lot of vendors will implement the protocol side, but won't necessarily implement the IETF configuration model for this. We've done quite a lot, and this was based on discussions from various authors and things, but also maybe in the last meeting, we've unified the behavior in Yang Push Lite a lot more between configured and dynamic subscriptions. So Yang Push has different state machines, more states and more differences between those two. Whereas what we've aimed for Yang Push Lite is to try and have exactly the same sort of raw state machine and description of those two. And the key difference between a dynamic and a configured subscription is simply on how they're created. There's a couple of other differences in terms of whether you're allowed a single or multiple receivers, but at its heart, it's really like we want to treat these things as much as possible to be the same thing in alignment. So we've done that, and that's been quite a lot of reworking of the text to sort of commonize it as much as possible for those, and then have some small sections describe the differences between the two. We've added an end of period notification flag. So one of the observations is, that's hard with these telemetry protocols, is how do you know when something's been deleted? So either you're relying on the sender, the publisher of the data, to give you an explicit notification that something's been deleted, or you need a way for the client to discover that. And so on initial sync, Yang Push always had an end of sync flag to say, look, we've sent you all the data, and that allows the client to sort of do a mark and sweep and to delete stale data. But on a periodic subscription, you might have implicit deletes and things, and the fact that Yang Push doesn't have this end of marker, maybe that's given by the fact it's only giving you a single message. But when it comes to Yang Push Lite and we're sending multiple messages, we need a way to say you've sent all the data up, and hence we've added an end of sync, periodic notification flag and or separate message so that clients can do that. Related to that, and I think this is still open, is to whether we add an extra ID to try and track all the messages that are tied into the same periodic update, or whether we use an event time for doing correlation there. Jason, do you want to come and answer your question?
Jason Stern. You mentioned that one thing that you're wanting to do is be able to split up a subscription so that you have lots of different processes perhaps on the blocks feeding them. So I'm just wondering if there's been discussion around feasibility of that end of period notification. Like that may be quite difficult to do if it's farmed out to all sorts of asynchronous processes that are actually feeding that data. You would have a requirement to support that. The devices would have to be able to coordinate between those. So they'd have to know. And the reason why this is useful is because otherwise, if the subscriptions end up
sometimes being very long and delayed in terms of when they're sending the updates, and they start to merge into each other, like the next one merged into the first one, into a previous one, then it's hard to find when those events have occurred. And coming from speaking to some operators and things, they've said that they have a strong desire to have this sort of notification, to be able to know that that you've had the end of a given subscription period before moving to the next one.
I see that point. It seems to conflict with the independence of being able to split it up into independent processes. I should note, there's an interesting discussion on the same issue for GNMI-based telemetry at the moment.
Yes,
going on.
There is.
So it'd be probably interesting to share some of that discussion between the two bodies in some way.
Absolutely, and I think that's I think generally true in terms of what we're trying to do here is we are mindful of the discussion that's happening within that GNMI space in terms of how you handle the notifications, as well as how we sort of handle them within Yang Push Lite. And the same applies in terms of the messages we're sending, and the format is not to make them identical, but to make them more aligned between the two. So that is one of the goals here, because there's an expectation for people who have GNMI implementations that you should be able to leverage a lot of the code and share a lot of the functionality. So I've added in some more operational monitoring data. This is a relatively minor issue, so that's just sort of in terms of monitoring what's been sent, how many messages you sent, etc. So that's all fine. I'd added in a receiver disconnected notification. So one of the things that we've changed with Yang Push Lite over Yang Push is we've tried to get as much as possible the messages to be sent on the subscription rather than per receiver. So if you've got multiple receivers, you send the same messages to everyone. And the one exception to that is if a receiver goes away, is to be able to tell that receiver you're not going to get any more data. And so I'd added in like a per receiver notification to say this receiver has gone away. However, that has the complexity that in terms of the envelope draft, it has a sequence number in terms of which message is being sent on the subscription. And suddenly you're going to be messing up that number space if you send a per subscription message. So I think that there's probably a mistake to add that in on a per receiver basis. And instead we'll look for a solution where we send that per subscription and identify maybe what the current receivers are or something similar. So I think that will change. I've added quite a lot of examples, and those are now validated. So JSON examples before, it's not complete yet, but we're moving that direction, and hopefully by the next version that will be fixed up. And through the tooling I validate those as much as possible. I know that Thomas this is like just calling out the work he's been doing on libyang and its validation. So as that work progresses, hopefully I'll then be able to pick that up and do more validation of the messages as well, which would be nice because it's only pick up a few fields, but still useful. I've updated the IANA considerations, that's fairly minor. And then finally, the draft had a lot of sort of open issues and discussions at the back of the document. I've now moved those onto GitHub, and they're being tracked there currently as we work through those. So what's there left to do? There's still a lot of work. So this is still, although it's again, the document's progressed quite a long way, and although it's still based on an existing protocol, there's still a lot of work to do in terms of where we need to get to, but that's okay. So as I mentioned before, some more text to clean up NACAM RPC errors, and some examples to clean up. And I think there's some other stuff we need to merge in, potentially text from 8640 and 8650, which is doing Yang Push over NetConf, or dynamic ones over NetConf and RESTconf. I think we need to have some discussion about that. And I think this is a limitation in Yang that's causing this, is that when you do define RPCs in Yang, you define the input and the output on the success path, but there's nothing to define the error path. And hence that ends up as sort of prose in the document as to how you map those back to XML or whatever. So that's something that we might need to merge into. So Yang Push Lite uses this thing called YPath, which is like a JSON-like version of a subset of XPath for identifying what you're subscribing to, potentially with keys being optional or included in that. So at the moment, there's some text in this document that's defining the starting point of YPath. I know that James has a separate document that he's working on that hopefully will pull that out. And that's one of the things that also Andy Bierman, when he sent me some comments a couple of days ago, he suggested it'd be good to get YPath out into a separate document. So I would like to do that and get that split out. but also have that moving fairly quickly. And I think there's some interesting questions about exactly what that Y path would look like in terms of, is it a very small subset, or does it try and replace X path more completely? And if we do things like that, we need to make sure we can do the simple thing quickly and then work on the complicated thing over longer time. Balazs, you're remote or local? I can't see.
As I understand, this Yang path would be a JSON version of X path, and actually there is a 3GPP specification that tries to do the same. I'll put in the chat the 3GPP specification number for it.
So yes, maybe. So I think it's not so much a JSON path, but I'm trying to do a Yang path. So I think one of the issues with XPath is it's tied to XML. And so there's been cases where I think that that's caused an amount of friction and more complexity than is necessary. And although I like the ability to reuse what's there, I don't think XPath 1.0 has been a great fit for Yang in terms of writing mass statements and things like that. I think that there's cases where lots of people make mistakes. And I think that in terms of looking at like XPath 2 or 3 that are more generic, they're much bigger languages and much more complexity. So I think that trying to do a Yang specific version of this that's quite lightweight is maybe a better path. But
so question on Yang path. So I haven't followed that document in detail. I'm just question whether there's been any discussions about using Y path everywhere in NetConf. So, or is it going to be X path for existing stuff and Y path for Yang push Robert Wilton, as we're calling it now? So
I don't know. I think that's a good question in terms of how far we try and go. I think for some of those things, it would be a matter of trying to do it in like Yang next and NetConf next. If you're trying to roll it out more broadly, the two use cases I have for it now is basically subscription paths for Yang push, and also I was wanting to use it for Yang packages as well. So basically, I don't like embedding XML-based paths into these things because it has a lot more complexity in terms of then managing namespace and things, whereas I much prefer the sort of JSON-style path where you put the module prefix in, and it just sort of works across the different things. So that's really the thing that's sort of driving a change here.
Yeah. So anyway, I think splitting it out would make sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've already talked a bit about splitting out config, so we had a discussion on that before. I don't think we need to do anything now on that. I don't think it's worth having a discussion unless somebody else wants to raise it. We have time. But at the moment, the plan will be to probably try and keep the config in the document for the moment, but make it quite clear as a separate section, make it optional where we are at the moment. And then I said there's like 24 open issues that we need to work through. Some of them, I think we've already got some resolution path to, so it's a matter of updating the document with the text in. There's other ones that need further discussion to make progress with. So, Per, do you want to go on?
Yeah, so back to YPath. Can you use the API identifier from RESTconf? Would that be good enough? The RESTconf path? So you have the module name and then colon identifier and slashes.
That I think is basically what it is. I think it might end up being very, very similar, or I don't know if it's exactly the same.
So do you need to do anything like special or tricky, or you just want to point out the path?
We want to include the ability to have keys in the path and have them optional keys, and we want to probably be able to do regex on those key names as well. So
okay, so a bit more involved than RESTconf paths.
I think so.
Okay,
basically, James.
Yeah, James, just to update on that same. Yes, the idea is to be able to include list keys. Also list key values if you're looking at instance data. So provide paths that enable you to reference schema data plus instance data, and then potentially as a next step, some search data, whether that's wildcarding or regexing. It's kind of a mix of the JSON 7952 spec and how you define an instance identifier. So it's kind of merging those two things together is the proposal.
Yeah, I think the only thing missing from API identifiers in RESTconf is the search space in that case, because you can give keys and so on.
Yeah, Yeah, so the plan is to provide this as a separate draft, I think. So that's kind of work in progress already, and hopefully we'll have out soon for review by everyone.
And then one of the last sort of, I think, issues that's still quite large and open is like the message format that's moved much more closely towards what GNMI is using. I think we still need to have further discussion to figure out exactly what those messages are used for a periodic subscription versus on-chain subscription versus a joint subscription. So again, I don't think we're quite there yet on agreement there. So there's still more discussion, but I think we'll get there. And this also, like GNMI supports an atomic flag. I don't know we need to have something similar to that in this or not, but I would like the solution to be not overly complicated, but also to be complete with what it needs to do in the short term. So our plan, so basically we continue to work through the main issues of the next few months. We're sort of meeting on a roughly weekly basis and things that's been picking up. I said bi-monthly there, and maybe that's more realistic. I think the key question here is whether this is a good time to ask for working group adoption. So, and that's not necessarily to say the specification is now ready and ready to go, but it's definitely, I think, to a point where people can start reviewing what it's in there. I think it's in that sort of state. It's got a lot of issues still open in it, but I think that'd be a good point. But really trying to get a read or confirmation for the working group that this is the right direction to be going in, and this is a good thing to be spending time on. Or if it's not, to find out why. And or alternatively, another thing would be to do a focused interim if that was also, if you wanted sort of a longer explanation of exactly how this differs from the existing draft. I would say in the document here, at the end of it, the one of the appendixes, it lists the changes, or tries to list the changes between this and Yang push. So what things been added, what things been changed, what things been removed. I don't know that's fully complete yet. And then the plan is, at least from our side, is I'm hoping that we'll sort of get to a point where this document is stable enough fairly soon that we can start working on implementation. So we have an implementation on Yang push. We've not yet moved towards Yang push Lite, but the intention is that maybe by the middle of next year, we would start to do that. But I want to get some of these sort of key bits about the message format, things tied down before we start sort of digging into the implementations. Yes, Thomas.
Yeah, just want to say +1 on the working group adoption, because I think if we look at the chair slides at the beginning, we can see that most of the Yang push work is now really closing on the working group, and I think it's good to bring that now into the working group and start the discussions and refinements.
Per is preparing a show of hand poll. Any other comments regarding whether or not now is a good time to adopt, or should we wait until some more of the details have been sussed out so we know exactly what we're adopting? Of course, even if the details aren't sussed out now, they can be sussed out as a working group document. Oh, the poll's already begun. So, Joe, please go ahead.
Joe Clark, I think, judging by what I've learned from Yang module versioning, bringing it to the list sooner and keeping the discussion there is probably a good thing. There's clearly, in my opinion, there's interest in this. So I think adopting now and getting the conversation here, maybe an interim, is a great idea.
And just to your point about, so I think a lot of the stuff is in a good state. So there's some big issues to resolve, but it's not like this is a massive document that's in a huge amount of flux. I think it's just as we merge stuff in and make improvements and things. So I think it's reasonably stable and heading in that direction.
So this is about the amount of people that have been participating in the polls previously. So it appears that there's a majority for adopting the work plan.
Okay, I've just got one more slide to share after this, just so. So if you want to see where the latest version of this is the links to it. So it's hosted on a GitHub repo. That's where it is. That's where the issues are currently being tracked. Obviously, if it gets adopted, they will move. And that's the latest draft. And the other bits I think already mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And now we have time for open mic. Oh, yes. Paulo, in the queue?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. No, I had just one comment for Rob. I really wanted to leave it for the end. It's about the naming. When Rob was saying that he doesn't care much about the name, it a little bit shows our strength and weaknesses as a group. Like we are great engineers, probably we are less good marketers, you know? So I would say that there has been a sparse but constant work of outreach and PR towards the name Young Push. For sure, Thomas has been doing that, Benoit as well, myself, I include myself in that. And changing totally the name, I think it would be a mistake. It would just confuse people. So I totally support that maybe this should not be called the Young Push Lite, maybe Young Push version 2. It's a better idea, but we should not deviate much from the Young Push, thing. I mean, maybe it's not the greatest name, but that's what we have got. And I advocate for a little bit of consistency. And at the very least, we should not, let's say, drop our trademark Y. I don't know, we want to call it Y Push or YNMI. That's all good options.
Rob responding, so that's great comments. Yes, I think that's very valid. So yes, thank you.
Rashad?
So a question I forgot to ask on Rob's presentation when you had better alignment with GNMI. How do I go back, or anybody goes back and says, well, we should be using Young Push Lite or Young Push V2 instead of GNMI when we're using GNMI now and you're telling me this is more. And I know some of the problems with GNMI not being standardized, or the fact that, we don't have input to the GNMI as we do on IETF. But I mean, I've had private discussions with some people in the past. Maybe some of that in public would be good.
So just to respond to that, I think that for folks that GNMI is working okay on, that's fine. I think, though, that it's good for IETF to have its own protocol stack for these things. And the main issues that I think it's addressing is the differences of implementations in GNMI. So we're having this discussion. Evan's been trying to drive discussion for some consistency between behavior and GNMI. And the problem is there's implementations now, and people are reticent to sort of change what they're doing because it will break the existing implementations. So it's not backwards compatible. So I'm not quite sure that I pretty sure what Evan's trying to achieve. I don't know how far we'll go. I think some of the simple things, there'll be unanimous agreement to get rid of them, and other bits will still stay fairly ambiguous in its behavior. So where I'm hoping is that with going through the IETF process, a more rigorous review, in terms of how we're using this and deploying the protocol, we can get a bit more structure and agreement up front of, yes, this is exactly how we behave and what the expectation is. And in the cases where the behavior is kept open, that's very explicitly made. It's like where you've got that choice rather than just being unspecified. So I think that that's the advantage. The other thing that I think where Young Push Lite or Young pushes one out is like extensibility. The fact that I think one of the reasons Thomas went down the path of using Young Push is because he was able to add in the extra bits of information without fundamentally changing it. I think with GNMI, again, that's much harder to do. So I think that's the other thing that's driving it. And in terms of whether this wins in the industry, I think it comes down to having end-to-end solutions. If you have end-to-end solutions that are built around like the data store, like the observability and telemetry work that Thomas is driving, is if we have a solution that people can deploy with client code, then that I think is the thing that drives adoption of these protocols, because I think that's what drove the adoption of GNMI. Is it was there and there was client code, so it was easy for people to pick up. Even if it wasn't perfect, it was better than nothing.
Okay, I guess I'm next in queue. Kent as chair. my open mic discussion regards to what extent should the working group insist that NetConf and RESTConf are maintained in a complementary way? And I want to preface this by saying it was a few years back, I think actually Mahesh was my co-chair at the time, when I raised the discussion. It was actually an open mic discussion near the end of one of our sessions. And at that time, I think the statement or the discussion was along the lines that we should try to do this. It was an aspiration. And there was some discussion and there was no objection, but there wasn't really a thing that came out of it. Something that was normative. There was no milestone or target or anything that was actually put to, something that we could point to and say, this is actually something the working group wishes to do. So I'm trying to re-raise that conversation now because as chair, I do see a number of documents that come through and many of you are authors. And I know there's a lot of, the initial push from vendors is to focus on NetConf because that's where your primary, target customer base is at. And so, the documents come, hey, we want to improve NetConf. And my pushback, well, not just mine, but a common, thing is, well, what about RESTConf? Like, shouldn't we also do this for RESTConf? And then thirdly, should we factor out the common bits into a common document like list pagination and then have mappings like the list pagination mapping to RESTConf, the list pagination mapping to NetConf? It just makes it very clean. So it's a continuing thing. Even since then, there's been other documents that have been raised, and thank you to everyone who actually makes the effort to create mappings to both protocols. But I would like to actually have a show of hands, some form of consensus that this is actually something that we wish to insist upon going forward. But before the show of hand comes, can we have some discussion on this?
So I don't know on this one. So it feels for us that the API between controllers and devices seems to be, for us, near the university, NetConf, and that's what the market's asking for. So from that perspective, I think a question mark I have is whether NetConf and RESTConf are acting in the same space, or is it like the RESTConf is really the API to controllers and more likely to be used in that space, and then between a controller and device, it's NetConf is the predominant protocol. And whether devices also want to implement RESTConf as well, I don't know. So I don't think we're seeing much demand for it, and that we're not necessarily hoping to implement it at the device level. So I think that you have that in mind, then the question mark is, do these two protocols need to be in lockstep or not? Might depend on whether the features are more useful to a controller or more useful to a device or not. So that, again, might cause some pivot between the two. Having said that, I do like the idea of trying to get commonality, and I do find it sort of somewhat annoying that we have to re-specify almost the same change twice, when in many cases they should almost be identical. And you to do it in a common way, it would be like, actually, this just falls out. This is the way you apply these things to RESTConf. This is how you apply it to NetConf. So that would be beneficial. I don't think that's given you an answer to your question, but it's
perfect. A couple comments. A good point about potentially different spaces. Absolutely, RESTConf is commonly used for northbound of an NMS, and NetConf is used as northbound for the device. However, I'm sure everyone here is aware the InMops IAB workshop that occurred recently, and the output, one of the outputs from that was there's generally a sense by operators that it's difficult to manage devices, that the level of entry is hard. You have to use which programming language, which libraries, just it becomes an impediment effectively. And one of the reasons why gRPC is appealing. And one of the outputs from that discussion was, well, actually RESTConf is lower bar of entry to gRPC. gRPC requires a library, a specialized library, whereas JSON over HTTP is built into every programming language. You don't even have to have a library necessarily installed to do that. So it's more of a much forward-looking statement. Okay, actually, I'll stop there, and I see many more in queue. So next in queue. Jin Yu.
You're in queue. You're in queue. No.
Jin Yu, are you in queue? Okay.
I don't know whether he's in queue or not. Whether, Mahesh. So I think one other point that I think you were referring to when you were talking about stacking of RESTConf and NetConf was also the fact that if RESTConf is stacked on top of NetConf and it wants the controller to be a pass-through, then you do want the encoding to be such that there's very minimal work that the controller is trying to do. I think that's one of the reasons why we're trying to make them compatible, is to make sure that if there's a request coming not bound, that it can simply pass through the controller towards the device.
I think Lou, next in queue.
Burger. I think that maintaining parity of features is really important because it allows others to focus on model definition, like what we do in NetMod. If we start, without thinking about transport, if we start partitioning the marketplace or partitioning the solution space, we're going to start having Yang models that are targeted at one. And I think having that clean separation between transport and model definition has really advanced the ability for the market to accept Yang. And as soon as we separate that, I think we're causing problems in the market. That's sort of from the standards perspective. From an implementation standpoint, I think it's very much what sector you're supporting as to whether or not you want NetConf or RESTConf or GNMI.
Sorry, one point I forgot to mention was related to, I think Kent, if you're referring to the charter and whether there should be an explicit statement in there, I mean, we can try to definitely put it in, update the charters to indicate that we should aim for compatibility between NetConf and RESTConf.
Right, that's what I'm hoping to, one of the outputs this might be based on the poll. Are there any open while you're next in queue?
So, Benoit speaking. Lou, this is a question for you. I'm not sure I understood. So you said that the Yang models would differ if I use NetConf or RESTConf. Can you give me an example? Because if this is correct, then yes, it's a problem, but I can't, an example.
I heard Rob suggest that RESTConf and NetConf are headed towards different marketplaces or segments. So to me, the next logical step from that is, okay, I only need to solve it for this device type or this controller type. So why do I need to write my Yang model for everything? I only need to cover that particular use case. So what I think we would end up with is a partitioning in our models if we followed the logic that NetConf is for, I think you said devices, and RESTConf is for controllers. And I think that's a bad idea. I think we should have transport independence as well as encoding independence when we're working on our module definitions. Does that answer?
Yes and no, I understand, right? So let's say RESTConf for service model, right? And NetConf for device models. So you're telling RESTConf would only support those service types, for example, and not the device type. But to me, a Yang model is a Yang model. So I'm still looking for the exact example, if you don't mind.
So I'm in 100% agreement with you. A Yang model should be a Yang model. And it should be completely independent from whether we encode it in protobuf, in XML, and JSON. What's CBOR? We shouldn't care. And I'm worried that if we start saying we're going to partition the transport, that we're going to end up having to partition propagate up. So I'm actually completely in agreement with you, I think, Benoit, that it would be a bad idea to go down that path. I am concerned that if we went down the path that I think Rob was advocating, and Rob's here, so I want to let him speak, that we could end up in a place that isn't a good place for Yang. Now, Rob's here. I'd like to hear his example if he has any.
I don't have examples of where I'm not sure modules will be impacted by this change. An example where I'm thinking of is like list pagination. It's not clear to me whether list pagination, you need that down to devices or you need it to controllers or maybe both. I don't know. So it's some of those sorts of features where it's not obvious to me that you can specify them for both, but whether you'll get implementations of both places, I don't know. And maybe if you were trying to do it differently and targeting for a particular thing, you might change the solution for those particular things. Because you've got more constraints on devices in terms of what they're willing to do versus what you do on a controller, in my opinion. Maybe.
Since we have now the discussion, and also Lou is now joining this discussion, NetConf and RESTConf also implies encoding. So if you're discussing basically, we want feature commonality between NetConf and RESTConf, does this imply also on encoding JSON versus XML? Do we want that as well?
I think our Yang modules should be agnostic. They should fully support any encoding that you want that's standardized and defined. And even if it's standardized by someone else, as what happens with GNMI, we should be 100% independent. Encoding and transport.
Maria, you're next in queue.
Hello, Maria from the Europe. I'd like to note that CBOR is also there, and we are already solving problems with like IPv6 addresses being encoded as strings instead of binaries in CBOR. So there is already some kind of split, and I'm very much in favor of keeping all those things aligned, because as soon as we start diverging, it's going to lead into huge problems, and we are already having them in CBOR.
Okay, so Kent, as a contributor, the discussion is around, what is for the device, what is for the controller. That's a very IETF-centric focus, and I think that there's an opportunity here for RESTConf to sort of break out of that mold. Certainly gRPC has, right? It's not specific for managing devices. And I think RESTConf could be seen as not just a protocol for managing devices, but a protocol for managing applications of any sort, web-based application management. And the opportunity, it's really an order of magnitude greater focus, perhaps more than that, if we were to do this. So I'm not sure if what is a device, what is a controller focus matters. And Benoit, next in queue.
Right, so Benoit here. I'm still thinking about what we discussed. So maybe the question about if we want to have parity, I don't know if we want to keep the parity. I acknowledge that we have different domain, but I think that the key condition is what Lou mentioned last, is that regardless of what we do, we must have Yang models that are agnostic to the encoding and the transport. And that's the main thing we want to keep.
Okay, so one of the reasons why this is coming up is because there is a document that's in the working group, and it proposes a way of improving NetConf that is, in my opinion, potentially never possibly implementable in RESTConf. And I'm concerned. I don't know if this is it may be, but there's no proof. I'm not actually pushing for the RESTCONF solution to be defined at this time, but it'd be good to know if it's ever definable, right? Before we publish that RFC. So that's kind of the backstory, how we got here. So we are right up against time. I think we need to do the poll now. So please, Per, if you can start that poll. Okay, so we're at the end of the session, but also the poll has concluded. It appears that we do have consensus that we would like to ensure parity between RESTCONF and NETCONF. And Mahesh, will look to you to help us update the charter to state that. With that, we're concluding this session. Thank you everyone for participating and have a good rest of the week.
Yeah, but
Oh yeah.
Instead of having them finding just text them, but he does know.
Right.
Wouldn't make any sense to
Yeah. Yeah. Remember, you mentioned that to me before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. But you can do that on the
Yeah.
That's kind of draft specific almost.
Yeah, you mean per draft when you had Twitter?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, no, I take that back. That's not draft specific. Actually, I think so you mentioned your